Rain slammed against the metal walls of Outpost Sigma-9 like a drumbeat of warning. Dr. Nolan Reyes was checking the medical console when a shrill, almost human-like cry cut through the storm. He froze. It wasn't a signal from the outpost, it came from outside. Something was trapped out there. Nolan grabbed his storm jacket and rushed to the airlock. The wind hit him like a wall, icy and sharp, but the sound pulled him forward. He scanned the rocky field beyond the perimeter. Lightning flashed, and for a brief second, he saw a small figure trembling under a jagged slab of rock. Its skin shimmered faintly, iridescent like a pearl, and its eyes were wide, glowing with panic. A shiver ran through Nolan. It wasn't an animal he recognized. Not anything from the bioscanners. His pulse quickened. "Hang on," he muttered, sprinting toward the creature. He ducked under the storm's worst gusts, careful not to trip over the uneven terrain. Every step closer, the cry grew louder, more urgent, more human. The creature was tiny, no bigger than a child, with wings folded tight against its sides. Its scales were slick with rain, and steam rose from its trembling body, misting in the stormy night. Nolan crouched beside it, assessing quickly. Broken wing? Frostbite? The scanners couldn't even pick up a stable reading, it was too alien. He lifted the rock with a grunt, water dripping from his gloves. The creature hissed softly but didn't flee. Its body shook violently and Nolan wrapped it in his jacket. "I've got you. You're safe now," he whispered, unsure if it understood words, but the warmth and pressure seemed to calm it just a little. Lightning struck again and the creature reacted in panic, snapping its tiny jaws. Nolan's heart leapt. It wasn't trying to attack, just scared, confused. He took a deep breath, moving slowly, showing no sudden motions. His training in handling delicate patients, humans, animals, even experimental hybrids, kicked in. "Easy, little one. You're okay. Just breathe." He set up a temporary shelter using the storm tent and some heating pads from the medical kit. The creature's eyes followed his every move, glowing brighter in the dim light. Nolan realized it was studying him, or maybe it was trying to understand if he was friend or threat. Its tail twitched nervously, and a faint humming noise started from its throat. It was musical, almost like a code, or a call. Curiosity and fear mingled in Nolan's mind. Where did it come from? Why was it here, alone and freezing in the storm? He probed gently with a scanner. Its vitals were erratic, heart rate spiking, body temperature dangerously low. It could die if he didn't act fast. He wrapped it tighter in thermal blankets, pressing his own hands against its chest. "We can do this. We have to," he said, voice steady even as adrenaline surged. He started improvising, using saline solution to stabilize hydration and crafting a makeshift heating coil to regulate body temperature. Each small adjustment brought a visible change. The shivering slowed, the tail relaxed slightly, the glowing eyes dimmed to a calmer hue. Nolan allowed himself a tiny breath of relief. The first win. A small payoff, but a reminder that every second counted. Outside, the storm continued to rage and he could hear movement in the darkness. Not just wind or rain. Something else. Heavy footsteps. Or maybe wings brushing against the rocks. The hair on the back of his neck stood up. The creature twitched suddenly, letting out a long, melodic cry that echoed across the field. Then as lightning lit the sky, Nolan saw it, a shadow, massive and winged, moving in the distance, heading toward them. The creature he held stiffened. Nolan's mind raced. The storm wasn't their only danger. Something, or someone, was coming, drawn by this tiny alien's presence. He clutched the hatchling closer, shielding it with his body. The hum from its throat grew louder, almost like it was calling for help, or warning of what was approaching. Nolan's stomach tightened. He knew one thing for sure, he couldn't run. Not with it. He had to protect it no matter what. And then, through the storm and the roar of the wind, a single thought struck him like lightning. This wasn't just a random creature lost in the storm. It wanted him to do something. Something bigger than survival. Before he could even process the thought, a gust of wind nearly tore the shelter away, and Nolan realized, the real danger was only beginning. Something huge was out there, and it had already sensed the small dragon. Nolan tightened his grip. "Hold on. We're not done yet," he whispered. And in that moment, the tiny alien, shivering in his arms, looked at him as if it understood every word. Then the shadow moved closer, faster, and the storm seemed to hold its breath. Nolan pressed himself against the shelter's flimsy wall, the hatchling trembling in his arms. Rain pounded the tent, lightning flashing in jagged bursts. The shadow he'd seen earlier shifted again, larger, darker, wings slicing the storm like knives. He could feel the ground vibrate under heavy footsteps. His heart pounded, but he forced his mind to stay sharp. Panic would get them both killed. The creature in his arms whimpered softly. Its scales had cooled further, and Nolan's makeshift heating coil did little to stabilize it completely. He adjusted the blanket layers, keeping one hand pressed to its chest, feeling the tiny rapid beats beneath his fingers. The creature's breathing began to synchronize with his own. A small victory, but he knew it wasn't enough. Movement outside. Something enormous shifted in the darkness, circling the shelter. Nolan's eyes tracked it as it let out a low rumbling growl that made the tent flap violently. He could barely make out the silhouette, its wings stretched wide, tipped with jagged spines, eyes glinting with pale light. It was unlike any creature he had ever seen. Not only alien but terrifyingly intelligent. It wasn't just hunting, they were being watched, evaluated. Nolan whispered, "Stay calm. We can do this," though the words felt fragile against the storm. His mind raced. The scanners were useless in this interference. The storm blocked most sensors. He had only one chance. Keep the hatchling hidden and stabilize it long enough to think of a plan. He gently stroked its head. The hatchling's glowing eyes flickered in response, almost like a signal. Then it did something he didn't expect. It emitted a soft, melodic hum. The sound was faint but clear, almost like a code. Nolan tilted his head, listening carefully. His pulse jumped. Could it be calling for help, or warning him? The notes formed patterns, subtle but structured, as if the creature was trying to communicate. Another gust of wind tore the tent, and a heavy shadow loomed at the entrance. Nolan shifted the hatchling closer, shielding it with his body. Then, without warning, a figure lunged toward them. A massive dragon from the approaching pack, its scales dark and slick from rain, fangs glinting in the lightning. Nolan froze for just a heartbeat, then reacted instinctively. He grabbed a metal rod from the equipment shelf and swung it, not to strike but to make noise, to confuse and intimidate. The alien paused, tilting its head, curious. Nolan's heart thudded. One wrong move and it would attack. Another hum escaped the hatchling, longer, higher-pitched. The creature's voice seemed to carry an authority over the approaching dragon. The massive alien hesitated, wings fluttering, and for the first time, Nolan saw a crack in its aggression. Using the moment, Nolan crawled backward, dragging the hatchling toward the tent's center. He needed cover and he needed time. The storm howled around him and lightning illuminated the alien's features. Sharp, almost crystalline, but undeniably alive with emotion. It wasn't a mindless predator. It had intelligence, awareness, and curiosity. That realization sent a shiver down Nolan's spine. Protecting the hatchling wasn't just about survival, it was a test of courage and wit. He checked the hatchling's vitals again. Weak but stable enough to try something riskier. Nolan reached into his medkit and pulled out a portable stimulant patch used for emergency hydration and warmth. He affixed it to the hatchling's chest, praying it wouldn't react badly. The creature's glow brightened slightly, its hum growing steadier. Small payoff, the patch worked. Then the pack's leader moved closer, a shadow among shadows, wings slicing through the rain. It didn't attack, but the weight of its presence pressed down like a physical force. Nolan realized the creature was not alone. It had company, but the pack wasn't acting purely out of aggression. Something about the hatchling had stalled their attack, a force he couldn't understand. He had to buy more time. He remembered the artifact buried near the outpost. If he could mimic the hatchling's natural environment, signals, warmth, vibrations, it might confuse the pack. Nolan made a quick decision. "Stay with me," he whispered, securing the hatchling in a cocoon of thermal blankets and reflective panels scavenged from the outpost. Every movement was deliberate. Every sound measured. The pack circled, wings beating a rhythm that shook the ground. Lightning flashed again, revealing glimpses of scales that glimmered with strange patterns. Nolan noticed one dragon pause, tilt its head at the cocoon. Then another and another. Their behavior suggested recognition, or hesitation. The hatchling responded, emitting a series of rising hums like a song. The pack hesitated further, moving in careful, almost synchronized patterns. Nolan's mind raced. He had never dealt with something like this. The stakes were higher than anything he had faced in medical crises. Life or death, against creatures he couldn't fully understand. A small, unexpected moment gave him hope. One of the dragons nudged the hatchling lightly, testing it. Nolan held his breath. The hatchling responded with a soft glow and a reassuring hum. The dragon recoiled but didn't strike. Nolan exhaled slowly. Small victory, the creatures weren't purely hostile. Somehow, his quick thinking and the hatchling signals had created a fragile truce. But the storm wasn't letting up. And something deep inside Nolan told him this was just the beginning. The pack had intelligence and curiosity meant danger. As lightning illuminated the rain-soaked terrain again, Nolan noticed movement beyond the first circle, shapes larger than the pack, almost imperceptible in the storm. A new threat or perhaps another ally. He didn't know. He gripped the hatchling tighter. "We can't let them see us as weak," he whispered. "We'll survive this." And then, through the torrential rain, a new piercing cry cut across the field, not from the hatchling, not from the pack, but from somewhere else, deeper, larger, and unmistakably alive. Nolan's stomach twisted. Whatever was out there, it knew the hatchling existed and it was coming. The storm seemed to pause for a heartbeat. The pack tensed. The hatchling shivered again, but this time, its glow flared fiercely. Nolan realized that the moment of decision had come. Either they faced the approaching force or ran, and running wasn't an option. Lightning cracked across the sky, revealing a dark shape moving faster than the wind. Nolan's eyes widened. This wasn't just a dragon anymore. Something far bigger, more dangerous, and entirely unknown had arrived. And in that instant, Nolan knew that protecting the hatchling was no longer just a matter of courage. It would take every ounce of human ingenuity to survive what was coming next. Nolan's chest tightened as the shadow moved closer, cutting through the storm with a speed that made his mind reel. The pack of dragons that had circled them moments ago froze in place, wings tense, heads swiveling toward the new presence. It wasn't like anything he had seen before. Massive, darker than night itself, scales glittering faintly under the lightning, and eyes that seemed to burn with intelligence rather than instinct. His grip on the hatchling tightened. One false move and they would all be crushed. The hatchling's hum grew louder, almost urgent, pulsing in short, precise bursts. Nolan realized it was trying to communicate, but the signals weren't simple calls. They had structure, rhythm, and tone. Somehow, it was sending a message to the larger creature. Nolan's mind raced. Could this be why the pack had stopped attacking? Could the hatchling's instincts be controlling the outcome here? He needed a plan. The shelter wouldn't hold against something that size. Nolan scanned the outpost in the storm's flashes and remembered the buried artifact, the one the researchers had always whispered about but never fully explained. It controlled environmental signals, subtle energy patterns that could influence alien species in the region. If he could activate it, maybe he could replicate the hatchling's calls on a larger scale, distracting the massive creature long enough to buy time. Risky, but it was the only chance. Nolan slid carefully out of the shelter, keeping the hatchling cradled in his arms, and ran toward the excavation site. Each step was a test. One slip on the wet rocks could send him tumbling. Lightning illuminated the massive creature again, and Nolan froze for a second. Its eyes followed him, unblinking, watching every move. The storm felt like it had become alive, amplifying the tension. He reached the site and quickly dug through the shallow soil where the artifact rested. His fingers brushed the cold metal and he pressed the activation panel. A soft hum spread into the storm, faint at first, then stronger, resonating like a voice across the field. The massive creature tilted its head, ears, or whatever they were, perking. Nolan held his breath, praying the artifact could mimic the hatchling's signals accurately. The hatchling added its own hums, harmonizing perfectly with the artifact. A strange effect rippled through the air. The pack's wings stilled, their bodies stiffening as if mesmerized. Even the massive shadow paused. Nolan realized the artifact had amplified the hatchling's signal, creating a kind of beacon that commanded attention. A small smile touched his lips, the first real payoff in what felt like hours. But then lightning revealed something he hadn't expected. The massive creature shifted its wings and for the first time spoke, not with sound, but with a sudden projection of light from its body. Patterns, images, flashes that seemed to show a memory, a warning, and a plea. Nolan blinked. It was a holographic projection reacting to the hatchling and the artifact. Somehow, this species communicated with visuals as much as sound. The implication hit him like a punch. This was far more intelligent than he had imagined. The pack's leader edged closer, but Nolan stayed focused. He moved carefully, keeping the hatchling close to his chest, and observed the projection. It showed a nest, dozens of hatchlings like the one he carried but scattered, endangered. And then another image, the artifact itself, glowing faintly, interacting with the environment. It was a map of some kind, a hidden network of signals across the terrain that connected the hatchlings' locations. Nolan's heart pounded. He realized something critical. The hatchling wasn't just lost, it was a key to something bigger. The artifact didn't just stabilize it, It had been guiding the survival of the species. And now, with the massive creature here, the stakes were higher than life or death. This wasn't just about saving one alien, it was about protecting an entire lineage. A sudden gust of wind threatened to knock him off his feet, and the massive creature took a step closer, wings flaring. Nolan's instincts kicked in. He pressed a button on the artifact, sending a sharp, controlled pulse. The pack recoiled slightly. The holographic memory shimmered again, projecting the images of other hatchlings in distress. The giant dragon's response was immediate. It recognized the signal as authority, not threat. Nolan realized he had stumbled onto something incredible. The hatchling and the artifact were connected in a way that allowed humans to interact with this alien species on an entirely new level. It wasn't control, more like negotiation through empathy, intelligence, and precise action. His mind raced with possibilities, but no time to explore them now. He had to keep them safe. Suddenly, the hatchling twitched violently, letting out a high-pitched cry. Nolan's stomach dropped. From the storm's edge, a new series of glowing shapes appeared, smaller than the massive shadow but moving fast, circling closer. Another alien group? Or scouts? The artifact's hum amplified the hatchling's signals, but could it hold them off long enough? Nolan took a deep breath. He could feel the hatchling's tiny body shivering against him, yet its hum now carried confidence. It seemed to understand that Nolan had grasped the situation, that they were a team. A micro payoff that gave him strength, a spark of hope. He tightened his grip and whispered, "We've got to make it through this. Together." The massive dragon spread its wings fully now, enormous even in the storm's shadows. The pack edged in behind it, ready to respond. Nolan's eyes darted between the approaching shapes and the artifact. One false move and everything would collapse. He had to act with speed, intelligence, and courage. And then the storm itself seemed to pause. Lightning revealed the massive creature's face, crystalline, sharp, but with a glimmer of recognition. It wasn't blind instinct driving it. It knew the hatchling was special, and it had just acknowledged Nolan as its protector. But before he could savor the moment, the artifact pulsed sharply, sending out a sudden, intense wave of energy that made the hatchling glow brighter than ever. The surrounding pack flinched, but the massive shadow did something unexpected. It bowed its head slightly, wings lowering in deference, and then looked beyond Nolan toward the horizon. A new figure appeared in the storm's distance, a shape larger and stranger than anything he had faced. Nolan's heart skipped. Whatever that was, it was moving directly toward them, drawn by the hatchling's signal. He realized instantly that this was only the beginning of a much bigger challenge. He tightened his grip on the hatchling, taking a deep breath. "We can do this," he said, more to himself than the creature. But the thought lingered, how far did this network go and what else was out there waiting? The storm raged on, the artifact hummed, the hatchling glowed, and Nolan knew one truth: nothing about this night would ever be the same. Nolan's lungs burned as he pressed the hatchling closer to his chest, rain plastering his storm jacket to his skin. The artifact pulsed beneath his hands, sending waves of energy into the storm, amplifying the hatchling's glow. The massive shadow that had dominated the storm earlier spread its wings fully, an unstoppable silhouette against lightning-sliced clouds. The pack followed in tight formation, circling, tense, ready to strike. The hatchling's hum reached a crescendo, high and commanding, echoing across the rocky field. Nolan realized it wasn't just sound, it was a signal, a call to authority in a language he couldn't comprehend. The massive dragon reacted immediately, tilting its crystalline head as if listening, then froze. The pack mimicked its stance. Nolan understood in that moment, the hatchling was not just alive, it was leading them. But the storm offered no mercy. Wind shredded the thermal blankets around the hatchling, and rain slicked his footing. Each step he took toward the artifact risked both their lives. He had to reach it, activate a more precise sequence, and maintain the delicate balance between signal and chaos. One mistake and the pack would descend in a fury. He sprinted, the hatchling trembling violently against him. A massive claw slashed the air nearby, just missing him. Nolan's mind screamed, "Keep moving, keep the hatchling alive, don't look down." His hands found the artifact's controls, fingers slick with rain. He activated the next pulse sequence, timing it with the hatchling's melodic hum. A brilliant, synchronized wave of light shot out, washing over the pack. The massive dragon recoiled, its wings folding slightly, eyes glowing with recognition rather than rage. The smaller dragons froze mid-step, unable to move. Nolan could feel the hatchling pulse against him, the glow intensifying as if the creature was feeding off his courage, giving him strength in return. He dared a glance at the approaching shapes on the horizon. the new threat from Part 3. They were massive, moving faster than any known creature on the planet. Shapes of unknown biology rippling with energy, their eyes locked on the hatchling. Nolan's stomach sank. The artifact and hatchling had stalled the pack, but these newcomers were different. Bigger, faster, and likely far more dangerous. One of the pack dragons, smaller but fierce, lunged toward the hatchling. Nolan reacted instinctively, placing himself in the path, swinging a metal rod he'd grabbed from the shelter. The dragon skidded back, surprised by the human's audacity. It hissed, wings flaring, then froze as if torn between instinct and the authority of the hatchling's signal. A small payoff. A single, brave human had made a creature hesitate where instinct screamed attack. The hatchling responded instantly, its glow brighter than ever. Light streamed from its scales, wrapping around Nolan like a shield. The massive dragon let out a low, resonant roar, not aggression but warning. Nolan realized the hatchling was projecting a protective aura, amplifying the artifact's pulses. The pack followed suit, hesitant but obedient to the unseen commands. Then the storm shifted. A lightning bolt struck the highest rock near the outpost, throwing shadows across the battlefield. The approaching unknowns, momentarily blinded, hesitated. Nolan seized the moment, moving toward them with the hatchling cradled firmly. He had to confront this new danger head-on. Every second counted. He activated the artifact's final sequence, a combination of warmth, pulsing energy, and resonance with the hatchling's hum. The light surged, and for a split second Nolan felt the impossible. The world slowed, the storm, the wind, the rain, all bending around the combined energy of human ingenuity and alien intelligence. The pack's leader lowered its head in deference, wings tucked close. The smaller dragons mirrored the movement. And the approaching unknowns faltered, confused by the unexpected display of control. Nolan's hands were shaking, his muscles screaming, but he forced them to remain steady. The hatchling cooed softly, responding to his touch, glowing even brighter as if thanking him. The massive dragon stepped forward, towering over Nolan, wings brushing the clouds. Nolan held his ground. There was no fear left, only resolve. One choice remained: stand firm and protect the hatchling or risk retreat and lose everything. He stepped forward, keeping the artifact between himself and the shadow, letting the combined signal reach its peak. The massive dragon emitted a low hum, vibrating the air with power, but did not strike. Its eyes, crystalline, sharp, and intelligent, met Nolan's gaze. The understanding was mutual. He wasn't just a human, it was a guardian, a protector who had earned respect through courage, intelligence, and quick thinking. Then, in a sudden, unexpected beat, the approaching unknown surged again, faster than before, but the hatchling pulsed, sending a wave of blinding light that momentarily stopped them in their tracks. The pack and the massive shadow moved forward, surrounding the hatchling, forming a living shield. Nolan realized the impossible. The alien creatures trusted him because of the hatchling, and together they had created a defense that even the storm could not break. Lightning struck one final time, illuminating the scene. Nolan was soaked, exhausted but alive. The hatchling pressed against him, its glow dimming slightly, calm now. The pack retreated slowly, following the massive dragon's lead, leaving Nolan and the hatchling standing at the eye of the storm. Nolan exhaled deeply, the adrenaline fading. The artifact's hum decreased, and the hatchling's glow settled into a steady, comforting light. He had done it. Against impossible odds, a single human had protected a creature far more powerful than himself. HFY, human courage, ingenuity, and empathy had prevailed. But the storm wasn't done. A sharp pulse of energy from the horizon caught Nolan's attention, far beyond the pack, far beyond the artifact's influence. Shapes larger than anything he had imagined were moving through the darkness. The hatchling's hum shifted subtly, warning him. Nolan's gut tightened. Whatever had been drawn to the hatchling's signal was still out there, coming closer, and this time, it wouldn't be deterred by light or song. He tightened his grip on the hatchling, taking a shaky breath. The night wasn't over. The storm had calmed slightly, but the real challenge, the one he hadn't even imagined yet, was just beginning. Nolan whispered almost to himself, "We survived this, but we're not safe. Not yet." And above, beyond the circling clouds and fading lightning, a new shadow moved, bigger, faster, and impossible to predict. Something had seen the hatchling, something that would change everything. Nolan sank to his knees in the muddy field, the hatchling still cradled tightly in his arms. The rain had slowed to a drizzle, and the storm's roar had faded to a low rumble, but his heart still pounded. Around them, the pack of dragons had settled, wings folding gently, heads bowed in what felt like respect. Even the massive Shadow, the leader of the group, hovered nearby, glowing faintly, watching them with an intensity that made Nolan's skin prickle. He looked down at the hatchling. Its small body pressed into him, no longer shivering, its glow steady and warm. A soft, melodic hum escaped it, almost like a sigh of relief. Nolan smiled weakly. He had done it. Against impossible odds, he had protected this fragile alien life. He had used courage, intelligence, and empathy, and it had mattered. HFY, human ingenuity and morality, had prevailed. The hatchling's hum changed, weaving a pattern Nolan didn't fully understand, but the effect was immediate. The massive dragon leaned closer, its crystalline eyes shimmering with recognition. Then, with a slow, deliberate motion, it nudged the hatchling gently as if testing trust. The tiny alien responded with a bright pulse of light, wrapping Nolan in warmth. Nolan realized that the creatures weren't just alive. They were sentient, capable of forming bonds, and they had accepted him as part of that bond. A voice crackled over the outpost comms. "Dr. Reyes, are you okay? We detected massive energy fluctuations. What happened out there?" It was Commander Varela, her voice tinged with panic and disbelief. Nolan smiled faintly. "We're alive," he replied. "And I think we made some friends." The commander's exhale of relief was audible even through the static. "I'll send a team to extract you. Be careful, whatever's out there might still be a threat." Nolan's eyes flicked to the horizon. In the distance, beyond the retreating pack, shapes moved, shadows against the dim light, larger than anything the outpost had ever detected. They hadn't left entirely, they were observing. Something even greater had noticed the hatchling. His stomach tightened. Whatever was coming, it wasn't here to play. He pressed the hatchling closer. "We'll face it," he whispered. The creature's hum shifted again, almost like agreement, tiny pulses of light flickering across its scales. A micro payoff, an emotional reward for Nolan's courage and care. The hatchling trusted him completely, and somehow he had gained the trust of creatures far beyond human understanding. The pack of dragons slowly began to move, wings rising gently, forming a protective perimeter around Nolan and the hatchling. The leader lingered, glancing toward the horizon as if warning the larger, approaching unknowns to keep their distance. Nolan realized the profound truth of what had happened. His actions had not only saved the hatchling but had prevented a possible conflict between species. Humanity had intervened with empathy rather than aggression, and it had worked. He glanced at the artifact, still glowing faintly. Its hum had calmed, synchronized with the hatchling's pulses. Nolan realized the artifact wasn't just a tool, it was a bridge, a way for humans to communicate and cooperate with alien life in a way the galaxy had never seen. And through that bridge he had made a difference that mattered. As he stood, careful not to startle the hatchling, Nolan's mind raced. The approaching shapes on the horizon, larger, faster, unknown, were still out there. The hatchling's glow flared in warning. Whatever waited beyond the field had noticed them, had sensed the signal, and was coming. It was a subtle, tension-filled reminder. Survival had been won, but the adventure was far from over. The massive dragon gave one last look at Nolan, then lifted into the sky, wings slicing through the clouds. The smaller pack followed, forming an elegant, protective escort around the tiny alien. Nolan watched them go, a mixture of awe and anticipation filling him. He knew he had witnessed something historic. A bond between human and alien that could change everything humanity thought it knew about the universe. Rain began to fade entirely, and the first rays of dawn touched the horizon. Nolan's wet jacket clung to him, but he hardly noticed. His focus remained on the hatchling, whose soft hum had become a comforting rhythm. He realized that he had earned more than survival. He had earned trust, respect, and the opportunity to witness something extraordinary. A human had truly shined, not through weaponry or dominance, but through courage, intelligence, and empathy. A soft vibration came from the hatchling. Nolan looked down and realized it was pointing, in its own alien way, toward the distant hills. Something had shifted there. Another pulse of light, subtle but deliberate. Nolan's chest tightened. The hatchling wasn't just guiding him now, it was giving him a glimpse of a larger world filled with creatures, signals, and challenges that humanity had yet to understand. He smiled faintly, determination settling in. "We're ready," he whispered. The hatchling responded with a soft, approving hum, wings twitching lightly in anticipation. The horizon was calm for now, but Nolan knew better. The universe had noticed them, and the next challenge was already moving toward them. He took one last look at the field. The storm gone, the pack vanished into the clouds, and the horizon calm but holding secrets. Then he turned toward the outpost, clutching the hatchling tightly. Whatever lay ahead, he knew this. Humans could face the unknown, protect life and build connections where others saw only danger. And somewhere beyond the hills and clouds, shapes stirred, curious, intelligent and waiting. Nolan's pulse quickened, not with fear but with resolve. The next chapter was coming. He didn't know exactly what, but he did know one thing. He and the hatchling were ready to meet it head-on together. The hatchling hummed one last time, a soft, steady glow wrapping around Nolan like a promise. The story of courage, empathy and humanity's shine wasn't over, it was just beginning. And in the distance, a shadow shifted, larger than before, moving toward them. Nolan gripped the hatchling tighter. Whatever was coming next he would face it because humans didn't give up, and he wouldn't either.